The next item of business is a statement by Derek Mackay on Ferguson Marine update. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of his statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Derek Mackay for up to 10 minutes, please.
Presiding Officer, I'm grateful for the opportunity today to provide Parliament with an update on Ferguson Marine Shipyard in Inverclyde. The Scottish Government has been working for 2 years to support a commercial solution for the future of the business and its workforce. We're committed to securing a future for commercial shipbuilding on the Clyde and are proud of the steps that we've taken to save Ferguson Marine. In August, as a result of the extensive cost and time overruns, the 2 ferries under construction and severe cash flow limitations, the directors of Ferguson Marine Engineering Limited gave notice of their intention to put the business into administration. In order to remove the threat of closure, Scottish ministers took control of the yard. This action avoided a lengthy administration that would have created further uncertainty for the workforce, further delays for those communities awaiting delivery of the vessels, and protected the value of the loan Scottish Government had provided to the business. We immediately took steps to stabilise the business and get the delivery of the ferries back on track. We completed the commercial transaction on Monday the 2nd of December, establishing the new business under the name of Ferguson Marine Port Glasgow Limited, as a company wholly owned by Scottish ministers. Shipbuilding in Scotland is a proud part of our nation's history, and this government was not prepared to see the expertise and the skills established over more than a century disappear into insolvency. As a result of our actions, we've ensured that shipbuilding on the Lower Clyde will be part of our nation's future. My priorities for Ferguson Marine remain the same as I set out to Parliament in my statement on the 3rd of September. To protect jobs at the yard, to deliver much-needed new ferries, and to secure a future for Ferguson Marine and commercial shipbuilding on the Clyde. The alternative for the Scottish Government was to walk away, resulting in hundreds of job losses, the yard's closure and our vital ferries not being finished, and I was not willing to walk away. I published today a suite of documents which details the Scottish Government's engagement with Ferguson Marine since the award of the ferries contract in 2015 until the business entered administration in August, and our commitment to a successful outcome. These papers tell the story of the significant issues under the previous management and the steadfast position of the Scottish Government acting in good faith at all times to secure the future of the yard. The contract for the ferries anticipated delivery in mid-2018. The customer, CMAL, had personnel in the yard throughout the build and first highlighted concerns in November 2016. Scottish ministers encouraged CMAL and FML to work together and made every possible effort to find a solution to FML's problems, including the possibility of mediation, the provision of commercial loans and the input of a range of expert external advisers, often in response to requests from FML as they raise concerns regarding the contract for the project. Concerns about progress on the vessels were raised at various points, and the advice we received on these from FML and CBC, as well as a number of advisers, including independent advisers appointed specifically to provide assurance on progress, was conflicting. The lack of clarity and progress of the vessels on design changes and the prospect of litigation by FML under the contracts has hindered the project throughout. The Government consistently acted in good faith on the best information available to us, and unfortunately, despite our best efforts, the problems incurred by the yard in delivering the design and build contract for 801 and 802 could not be resolved. The full picture was not revealed until the new management team had control of the yard. We appointed Tim Hare as turnaround director on the 16th of August. His mission was to stabilise the business and to put in place a programme to complete the 2 ferries. A programme review board of key stakeholders was established to oversee this work and provide guidance. So I received the final report on the 13th of December, and copies are available at the rear of the chamber. The report published today sets out in stark detail the failings of the previous management, and it's difficult to overemphasise the disastrous impact of the absence of proper management processes had on the yard. This had implications for the condition and progress of the ferries being constructed there and the scale of the challenge that lies ahead to put right the failures of the previous management team. And I would like to thank both the employees and the new management team who have worked so hard to deliver this report. The skill, commitment and quality of the workforce has never been in question. The new management team is focused on delivering key management practices to implement new and robust processes which will better meet the needs of the business and provide greater control. And this will ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. The challenges of the new management team have included the failure to implement a sound management information system on which to base any assessment of progress to date, critical issues with both the design process for the vessels and the approvals process for that design. The design programme for the vessels, which was the responsibility of FML as part of a design and build contract, is several years behind. Getting this back on schedule will be a key area of work going forward. Project planning was largely absent, resulting in out-of-sequence and often abortive work. Controls and subcontracted resource and materials were lacking, quality control through the build-out process was largely absent, and the vessels have not been maintained in the condition that we would expect. So, of course, it's of significant concern to me that the advisers placed in the yard to report to the Scottish Government couldn't pinpoint the full extent of these issues while the previous management were in place. Since we've taken control of the yard, significant progress has been made in reorganising the yard. Significant work is also underway to address the known defects and to take remedial action to ensure that the steel in the vessels receives the necessary paint protection. Further information is required to fully understand the implications for delivery of the vessels, including the full extent of rework required across the vessels, the condition of the underside of vessel 801, which will need to be inspected in dry dock, and the ability to successfully commission equipment where warranties have expired. This is not an exhaustive list, but I hope it provides a sense of the scale of the challenge involved. So the contracts for the vessels had a value of £97 million, and a further £1.5 million increase had been agreed through the proper mechanisms in the contract. £83 million, which was paid out to FML. So the failures of management, planning and process mean that the vessels are behind their original programme and that significant rework is required. So as a result, we expect further costs, including the £15 million outstanding of the £32.8 million for vessel 801 and £45.9 million for vessel 802. So this includes an allowance of £12.8 million for rework and remediation, which will be undertaken in the period to May 2020. In addition to this, a further £31.6 million will be required for overheads, such as yard running costs, consumables and personnel that would be included in the contract price. As a result of the additional cost to complete the vessels beyond the contract price and to improve the management and operation of the yard, in order to do so, will be £94.8 million. Now, although the PRB report indicates this could increase to £98.8 million if certain risks materialise. So all of these additional costs result directly from the delay and poor management of the previous management team. This is based on the estimated delivery window of October to December 2021 for 801 and a window of July to October 2022 for 802. Transport Scotland will work with CalMac and key stakeholders to mitigate the impacts that the delay to the ferries will involve, including the Ferries Resilience Fund of £4 million to improve the resilience of the fleet. And we'll also continue to take forward a comprehensive review of the needs of the ferry network, developing a future pipeline of vessels required to service our island communities and explore the role that Ferguson's can play in meeting those needs. Public ownership of the yard will allow us to ensure that the ferries are completed and provide the workforce with security. And we're already seeing progress. 68 new staff members have been recruited to support the yard's work, and the detailed understanding we now have of what it will take to complete the ferries is a significant step forward. Sound governance will be important to ensuring the stability of the business and a clear sense of commercial direction going forward. A board and a chairperson will be appointed in the coming months, with members selected to ensure that the business benefits from the direction of people with skills and expertise and experience to support its success. Bringing the yard into public ownership was the only viable option to achieve our goals of delivering the vessels, safeguarding the jobs and giving a future to the yard. It was and is the right thing to do, and I'm proud of the progress that has been made since the Scottish Government took control of the business on the 16th of August. We now have a team approach to work together to complete the vessels, safeguard the jobs and give a future to the yard. That has been our guiding mission throughout, and we will deliver.
The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in the statement and allow around 20 minutes for that. Would those who wish to ask a question please press the request to speak buttons. Thank you very much. I call Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of the statement? This information was promised to Parliament by the end of October and conveniently buried until after the election. And hearing the Cabinet Secretary, now I know why. The ongoing saga, Presiding Officer, of these new CAMAC ferries is one which should come as a great source of shame to the SNP and all of its members. It is an abject failure to deliver to our island communities new ferries on time or on budget, as today's statement confirms. Beleaguered shipyard workers had their business put into administration as a direct result of the actions of this Scottish Government. The Cabinet Secretary, with no hint of irony, wants us to praise him for saving the yard which his own government put at risk of closure in the first place. It is shocking, Presiding Officer. These ferries were expected in 2018 and both were due to cost £98 million. But today we learn these ferries will cost at least £200 million and be at least 3.5 years late. He's quick to blame the management team at the yard, which begs the question, what government oversight was taking place during this phase? Let me ask, Cabinet Secretary, what role did CMAL have in the demise of the yard in the first place? Where were they during these so-called failures that you speak of? And after the yard went into administration, what offers were received for it? And on what grounds were they rejected, given that the Scottish Government was the largest creditor in this process? How much money paid by the Government to loans, as loans to the yard, has been written off by the Government? What the Cabinet Secretary thinks the total cost to the taxpayer for these two ferries will be? Does he think that's value for money? And how many ferries could that have paid for? And finally, Cabinet Secretary, can you advise the Chamber what happened to the other commercial work on the yard's order books, given that the yard is now state-owned?
Derek Mackay.
I would just simply say I think it's astounding for a Conservative to talk about shame in shipbuilding. It was a Conservative that destroyed shipbuilding in Scotland and many other industries where this government has intervened. But let me say, if it wasn't for the actions of the Scottish Government, Ferguson's would not have a tomorrow. It's the actions we've taken to date that will ensure that Ferguson's has a future, and that's the important point here. In a perfect world, it would have been better if Ferguson's was just able to deliver the two ferries that we paid them for. That contract, design and build contract, a fixed price contract of £97 million. I'm sorry to say that the previous management has failed, and that's why we're in the position that we're in today. Let's look at what happened in Harland and Wolff, a shipyard elsewhere. What did the UK government do when that shipyard went into administration? Nothing. Mr Green asked me a question about the workforce. I'll tell you, the workforce appreciate that it was the SNP that saved the shipyard, saved their jobs and ensured continuity of employment. And the workers didn't lose a single penny because of the orderly process that we undertook. Mr Green asked me why other bids post-administration were rejected. That's a matter for the administrators. Does Mr Green not even understand the process of administration? And we, of course, put forward the best bid. I've outlined the additional costs. And of course it's regrettable that we will have to pay more money, but the alternative is to walk away, close the yard, lose the jobs and not complete the vessels. And when it comes to the Conservatives saying to me, isn't it terrible the vessels are going to be late, there wouldn't be any vessels because the Tories vote against their budgets that are paying for the vessels in the first place. In terms of independent analysis and oversight, we got conflicting reports. There was a poor relationship between CMAL and FML. I think that's perfectly well understood. We didn't just leave it to either side's opinion. We had independent experts look at it as well, and then we got further conflicting advice. So whatever action we have taken, and that's why I've published so much information today, when you look in the cold light of day, the information that we have had with our guiding mission, we have done the right thing throughout, and that is why I've been so open, so transparent and so clear in the mission that we have set out. And in terms of the loans, Yes, we had committed £45 million worth of loans to support the business. We were being called upon to support FML and support the business around working capital and diversification, and that's what we've done. And actually, the loans is what put us in a very strong position in terms of being able to take public control and then ultimately ownership of the yard. The Conservatives have a choice here. Do they want to support us in rejuvenating commercial shipbuilding in the Clyde? Yes or no? But I fear, unlike the actions of this government, they just want to play politics with people's lives, whereas we have saved jobs and we will deliver these vessels.
Can I have a bit of quiet here? Can I just say that's only one question, it's over 5 minutes. The problem, excuse me, I'm speaking at the moment, I don't wish to be interrupted. Can I say there's an issue on both sides here? Far too many questions to be given in a 1.5 minute slot, and far too long in answers as well, Cabinet Secretary, when it comes to it. That's going to have a direct effect on backbenchers, as has the time I am taking to explain this. Rhoda Grant.
This statement lays bare the disastrous mismanagement of this contract that has now doubled in price and is 4 years late. The Scottish Government appear to be passing the buck, but they have responsibility for how taxpayers' money is spent. And while they have dithered and mismanaged, the people in Arran, Uist and Harris are now left with inadequate ferry services and no reprieve in sight. And the workforce at Ferguson's have faced uncertainty about their future. We support the Scottish Government taking the yard into public ownership in order to rescue these jobs and vessels. However, it should have never come to this. Can I ask what legal action the Scottish Government is taking, given their alleged failures of the previous management to recoup the costs? And in the interim, will they lease additional vessels to ensure sustainability in the Calmac routes affected? And will he take this opportunity to apologise to the workers and communities that they have so badly let down?
Derek Mackay.
Well, I have to say I have visited the workers and I was applauded by the workers, so I don't think they're looking for an apology from me. They're probably looking for an apology from those who choose to play political games with Ferguson's, when our mission throughout was to try and deliver a contract. Let's be clear, it's just like I've heard, what has Abellio got to do with the railways and who's responsible for delivering the railways? In this regard, it was FML who was delivering a design and build contract. Unfortunately, they have failed, and in their failure, the government has intervened. Rhoda Grant said she welcomed the government's intervention. I didn't hear a simple or single suggestion as to what we could have done differently. At every stage of the way, we were intensively involved to try and ensure that a resolution could be found, but we have to deliver value for money, act within the law, and act in good faith, and that's what we've done. Now, when I publish the information that I've committed to publish today, I invite the Labour Party to read through that and say, what would you have done differently? And just the same as the Conservatives, the Labour Party hasn't supported any of my budgets, which has actually paid for these vessels in the first place. So when the new vessels are complete, it will be no thanks to the Labour Party.
We move to the open questions. I'll have Maureen Watt, followed by John Finney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Minister agree that, sadly, many of the issues faced by the yard were as a result of Ferguson Marine's failure to recruit enough professionals with the right technical expertise and know-how to undertake the building of these vessels?
Derek Mackay.
Yeah, I mean, I heard also the Conservatives complain about what they thought was my opinion, but the information I've given on the failure at the yard isn't my opinion. It's actually the view of the turnaround director, Tim Hare, who's presented what he has found at the yard and the plan for the remedies going forward. So yes, there was an issue about capability of management and leadership at the yard. Yes, that needs to be addressed, and we're getting on with addressing that, and that's why I have a turnaround director, and I've brought a programme review board together to achieve that outcome.
John Finney, followed by Mike Rumbles.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government are to be applauded for their intervention here. The phrase that constituents of mine will have picked up as the estimated delivery window. Now, I acknowledge the £4 million resilience fund that you referred to. The baseline for all our discussions on this is the ferry replacement plan, and you've referred to that as a pipeline approach. Well, that pipeline is, of course, blocked at the moment, Cabinet Secretary. Looking forward, are you able to say when that blockage will be removed and the estimated delivery window for the third next vessel that's due, which is mighty long due as well?
Derek Mackay.
Well, I make two brief points. First of all, I've touched on it in my statement. I think we should now look very closely at a future pipeline of work for further vessels. And in terms of the second point around the Isla vessel, I know that the Minister responsible for ferries, Paul Wheelhouse, would be happy to pick that up. But my point is this: see if we get it right and we can turn around the fortunes of Ferguson, essentially we may well have an opportunity to place further work, and that will be very welcome indeed in terms of a really robust future pipeline of vessel replacement and investment going forward long into the future.
Mike Rumbles, followed by Stuart McMillan.
I'm afraid the original placing of the orders for the two new vessels has now resulted in an almost doubling of their costs, with an extra £100 million for the taxpayer and a 3 to 4 year delay. Now, Cabinet Secretary blames Ferguson's management for this. He knows the detail. Could he therefore lay out exactly what due diligence was paid by the Cabinet Secretary when he lodged this contract with Ferguson's management in the first place?
Derek Mackay.
I won't be able to do that answer justice without breaching your request on being concise, Presiding Officer, but that's exactly why I've published a whole list of documents that Mike Rumbles is more than welcome to go to. I think I've been really proactive in publishing those documents, some of which could have been requested through freedom of information, but by being proactive, I'm certainly making all of that information available. Of course, due diligence was undertaken when the contract was awarded on a quality and cost basis. Of course, there was oversight throughout. There was oversight throughout. I mean, Ian Murdo-Fraser, so you did a very good job. I mean, remember the Conservatives awarded a ferry contract to a company with no boats over their Brexit preparation? We actually had the wisdom. We actually had the wisdom of awarding a ferries contract to an actual shipyard, which is revolutionary. But back to the point, back to the really important point. There was oversight, but we got conflicting information, and even when I sent in an independent advisor, that added to the very muddied picture as to exactly what was going on. The full extent of our knowledge of what's been going on at the yard has really only come to us when we took control of the yard, and that now equips us with the information and the intelligence to turn the yard around, to make sure that it's fighting fit into the future, and the workforce appreciate that. I've said before, this is not an issue about the workforce. It was an issue, frankly, of management and management processes.
Stuart McMillan, followed by Murdo-Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the statement and also for the decisive action that he's taken thus far. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide an assurance, though, that the 2-year window provides the Scottish Government with the opportunity to plan the future pipeline of work whilst the vessels 801 and 802 actually are being completed? And will Ferguson Marine Port Glasgow Limited be the yard that will obtain these orders?
Derek Mackay.
Yes, I mean, the priority will be and sorry, it will allow me to complete a question that Jamie Green fairly asked me, that we'll go on with completing the 2 vessels, of course, that the CalMac fleet are very keen, of course, to have as quickly as possible. There are other contracts, there is other work that we want to see completed as well, but that's still a matter between us and those companies. Of course, I'd want that work to be complete. And there was a lot of interest in the Babcock work, potentially, the Type 31 frigates. And in terms of the structure that we will design, it should enable Ferguson's to take work from both the public sector and the private sector, so we can optimise the opportunities that work can come from anywhere to go to Ferguson's. But we need to make sure that we restore its reputation and complete the vessels currently under construction.
Murdo-Fraser, followed by Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government puts the blame for this fiasco firmly at the door of the management of Ferguson Marine for their failure to deliver on the ferry contract. But this begs the question, why in 2014 were Ferguson's deemed a suitable company to be awarded this contract, given the management was, in the Finance Secretary's own words, and I quote, disastrous? Who in the Scottish Government took the decision at that time, and will they be held to account for their actions?
Derek Mackay.
Well, as Murdo-Fraser knows very well, government ministers are given recommendations from officials who have done an appropriate weighting of any bid. Ferguson's came out as the best bid, and it was on that basis in which the contract was awarded. I don't think anyone could have foreseen in 2014 that the management failures, frankly, would have been as they have been. No one foresaw that. But what we did know is that Ferguson's had a very strong workforce. It is a good place to do business, but the actual design and delivery, well, that's come to light after the last few years. Mr. Fraser, I would simply say, I mean, I really do think that it would be great to have a crystal ball and to know then what we know now. But the point is, when faced with these actions and we're faced with this information, the government is taking appropriate action. Don't just take my word for it. There's independent opinion. There's been independent reviews. I'm publishing all of this information. It's not just Derek Mackay's opinion. I am informed by others, and not least the turnaround director, who had no axe to grind with Ferguson's. So I know that Murdo Fraser's pulling my chain a wee bit here, but Murdo Fraser also knows that our actions have been the right thing to do.
Kenneth Gibson, followed by Neil Bibby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I welcome the Cabinet Secretary's statement. I'm sure he will understand the disappointment of my Arran constituents that with sea trials it is likely to be the summer of 2022 before the Glen Sannox enter service on their Drogheda to Brodick route. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that this will at least allow ample time to ensure that the Ardrossan Harbour redevelopment is completed prior to that, taking fully into account the needs of the Glen Sannox and delivering a more reliable service for the people and communities of Arran?
Derek Mackay.
I actually think there's a fair technical point there. Paul Wheelhouse, again, will be more familiar with the issues around the Ardrossan Harbour, and I believe it is making progress. But if there is a silver lining there, there is now that time to make sure that the harbour is absolutely fit for purpose for the new vessels. So there is something of a silver lining in that timescale. But Kenny Gibson, Alistair Allen and other members have been pursuing me aggressively for some time for the delivery of these vessels, because the communities they represent really want these vessels to be delivered. And I understand that, and that's also why we've invested in the Resilience Fund, so that we can support CalMac when it is under pressure, because we have pushed the fleet to the maximum capacity to try and respond to islanders' needs.
Neil Bibby, followed by John Mason.
If the workforce had been listened to earlier, then we would not be in this position. The only way that even these delayed times and costs will be kept to is if there's unity of purpose amongst the workforce, management and government. Does the Cabinet Secretary therefore agree that the workforce should not just be represented on the programme board but on the company board too? And is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the GMB's concerns over the recent use of temporary and agency workers?
Derek Mackay.
I can only say that I think I've got very strong relationships with the trade unions, and I see Neil Bibby nodding at that, because it wouldn't be truthful to say otherwise. I've got a very strong relationship with the trade unions. I've put, trade union representation on the project review board, and I'm very happy to look at future structures as well. But I know what the priorities of the trade unions were here, and that was to ensure an orderly transition, continuity of employment, save the jobs and give the yard a future. And I am absolutely committed to that, and the workforce know it.
Brevity would help me get everyone in. John Mason, followed by Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
Thank you very much. I understand there was 290 direct jobs and I think 60 contractors' jobs, but I'm not sure how many were in the supply chain. Can the Cabinet Secretary clarify just how many jobs in the local community have been saved through this?
Derek Mackay.
Well, as it stands, the current headcount based on my most recent figures was 334. That's 150 permanent, 175 temporary. There are contractors involved, that's 9. And there's recruitment going on for new employees for 33 vacancies. So more people have been employed at Ferguson's as a consequence of our action. And I was also delighted to attend the passing out parade, if you like, of the apprentices. And it was great to see them complete their apprenticeships and look forward to employment in Ferguson's.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that a significant number, potentially as many as half of Scotland's ferries, are ageing and will require to be replaced in the coming years. Among these are a number of boats in Orkney and Shetland's inter-island fleet, as well as others across the Highlands and Islands, and these are vital lifeline links. So given the Scottish Government intends to explore the role that Ferguson's will play in providing vessels for the future, can the Minister give his assurance to my constituents that they can have confidence in the procurement process and they will not see a repeat of this chaos, and communities across the Highlands and Islands won't be bearing the brunt of delays?
Derek Mackay.
Well, I think the point that I'm trying to explain is that there might be a virtue in the Scottish Government owning a shipyard in terms of a future pipeline of work. Now, that's not to prejudice what might happen in the future, because my commitment's not necessarily the ownership of Ferguson's, but the fact that it has a future, we safeguard the jobs and we complete the vessels. I know the demands. I've been a transport minister. I know the demands on the ferries. I know the nature of the ageing fleet. And as I say, if we're building up the capacity to ensure there's shipbuilding in Scotland, then I think we very well could have a very robust future pipeline going forward. but not to the exclusion of potential private sector work to Ferguson's as well. So yes, I can give that assurance. We will be looking at investment into the ferry infrastructure, as we have been, having committed, over £1 billion towards the ferry network over the last number of years. So we have a track record of investing in the ferry network, in the vessels, in the harbours, in the infrastructure, in road equivalent tariff, and I think it's a very strong record. I am disappointed that this design and build contract hasn't been successful, but rather than walk away, we're remedying the situation.
Quick question, please, Alistair Allen.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware of how important it is to my constituents in Harris and Uist that vessel 802 in particular enters into service as soon as possible and that both vessels relieve pressure on an ageing fleet. Given the delay, what will be done to engage with communities in Uist and Harris regarding any revised delivery date?
That wasn't very quick. Can we have a quicker answer, please, Minister?
Well, we're also straying into the Transport Minister's territory, but as I say, I have made resources available for resilience. We will engage with communities. My ongoing commitment as well is to continue to report to Parliament on the progress of the vessels, the progress that we're making, and if there's any substantial change to either the costs or the timescale that I've set out, then I'll make sure members are aware of it. And as I've already pointed out, Alistair Allen has been very enthusiastic in making sure that these vessels are delivered, which is why I know he'll be so delighted to know that we are going to finish the job.
Thank you. That concludes questions on the statement on Ferguson Marine, and we'll move on to the next item of business.